Hey, folks, welcome to the podcast. I got Allen Fugler, who reads as a who's who in the insurance industry. So we're going to be discussing all of the top 10 problems that pest control people face, how to avoid those pitfalls. Hey, Allen, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Franklin, thanks so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it, my friend.
Yeah, man. So I've met you twice. Met you back like 7 years ago I took the SDS class that you were giving at Broward Community College at I guess their extension service there when we were talking. I think this was before 2012. It was coming right in where you had to learn the new SDS and the new federal guidelines. Right. And you gave that class. I met you there originally. And then I met you again at PMU, which I was just at. And I'm going back today as we finish this podcast to the master's class. So I said, man, you really got to get into, because I see a lot of conversations on YouTube about insurance and all the pitfalls, and even stuff that you covered in the last class at PMU. I'm like, dang, he's right. I mean, I haven't been doing that, but he's right, and I should be doing that. So I know you've got a meeting, man. Let's talk about that. Let's go through what you feel is the top 10 things that, if we can cover it all, that pest control people really need to know. And especially new people and even old people as they're starting up. Like I'm starting up in termite. I'm going into a whole new legal realm. I'm meeting with, what's his name he was at PMU, the attorney.
Mark Ruff.
Mike Ruff. Yes. So I'm meeting with him on Tuesday, making sure I get my contracts. And then I'm having Joe Jonovich work with me on the strategy for how we go to market and how do we make that work in the contracts, because now we got to go into the whole, I'm contacting my insurance company now and dealing with this whole thing. And most people don't know how much this is involved. So yeah, let's get into it, man. What do you, tell us just a little bit about you, because I know you've been around a while.
It's been a long time in service, Franklin. I've enjoyed this industry so much. It's put bread on my table for almost 30 years. I've got 2 adult kids out of the house. They're married and successful on their own. I've got 1 more to get through. So I'm going to continue to keep the pace up and keep the faith. I literally started in this industry 29 years ago in Baton Rouge, answering an ad in the newspaper. They wanted an executive director for the Louisiana Pest Management Association. So I had some experience with private clubs. I had some experience with committees and things like that. I was kind of a political animal to begin with, and I answered it, and that kind of began my whole journey, my odyssey, if you will. I spent about 7 years as the executive director. The insurance company that was owned by pest control operators, that was kind of an affiliate operation of the association, asked me to join them, and I did, and became the vice president of marketing. Took that program national and gained about 18% of the U.S. market for general liability insurance. Nice. It was a wild ride. And about 2008, the Florida Pest Management Association came calling and asked me to be their executive vice president. I moved over there, started their lobbyist and putting together their regulatory relations program, some of their education programs. That's when I met you down in Southeast Florida, at the IFAS facility down there. We were holding classes all over the state. And about 2014, I went back to the insurance business and became the director of risk management for an insurance carrier that insures not only general liability, but workers' comp, commercial auto, commercial property, employment practices liability, and all of the other products and insurance coverages that pest control operators need to protect all of the aspects of their business. And so on December 1st, it'll be 30 years officially time in service. I'm kind of looking forward to that looking forward to that anniversary.
Are you getting a gold watch?
I don't think so. I don't think I've spent enough time with one particular company to get a gold watch from anybody. Right. I got more great. I guess silver would be the best medal because that's what I got up here now. So I would. I've just enjoyed it so much. I've been so blessed to be part of a lot of different aspects of this business. I met a lot of fantastic people inside the industry, outside the industry, famous people, people that are famous in their own minds, and it's just
like me.
Yeah.
I'm a legend. I'm a legend in my own mind.
There we go. No, you certainly are. You're a force for good in the industry, and we really appreciate you bringing this this format to us. And you know, there's something we can do easily while we're driving. You know, we can listen to the podcast while we're driving and do so safely, which is kind of my focus now, and that's employee safety. Company safety. We'll get into that, I'm sure, in just a few minutes. But yeah, absolutely. You provide a valuable service, and we really appreciate what you do for the industry.
Yeah, no, I mean, I thank you so much, because we're getting so many people in the industry right now where after 6 years, this is starting to take off. I mean, it's been, most people think, oh, wow, you've been doing it 6 years. How many downloads you have? It's like, not that many, but it's really starting to resonate with the industry and with people, and people are starting to take this seriously as a media for communication with them. And I look at it, and I'm getting all the calls from new people who are starting up, people who have been in the industry for a while, technicians that are struggling. It's helping a lot of people. And one of the things that will come to mind, let's start out with the first question, I guess, is guys looking to start up. I mean, that's where you're going to make all the mistakes at the beginning, because you really don't know what it is you're looking for. What do they need to know? I mean, starting up.
Well, absolutely. Well, if I was starting a business today, and I pulled Florida credentials, so I try to keep my chops sharp, from time to time by doing some work out in the field. If I was starting up right now, I would want to get as much information as possible. I would join every Facebook group I could.
Right.
I would participate. I would ask questions. I wouldn't be afraid of getting the snarky answers you get from time to time with social media. That's just what it is. Yeah. But you've got plenty of defenders out there. You've got a lot of people that are willing to share their time, their experience, and their expertise. So I would find mentors. I would ask all the right questions. I would start from a good foundation. I would have the right instruments. I would have the right documents. And you were right on point earlier when you said you're looking to get good contracts and protect your business.
Right.
I wouldn't Frankenstein any contract together. Everybody go to the internet and find anything they want to, which is fine as a base, but I would have that vetted by an attorney that was barred in the state in which I was operating.
Right.
So they're the ones that know the business, that have the expertise. And I would seek outside counsel for that. I wouldn't rely on my own. I certainly wouldn't rely on the attorney of some other company that I don't know. Right. I would try, if I was looking to hire my first person, I would want to know my employees, who they are. There's a small investment you can make when you're vetting your employees. Don't rely on word of mouth. Don't rely on, but gee, I've known the family forever. You don't know the employee. A small investment in a background check, criminal background check. Find out if they're on any kind of sexual predator register, because that's certainly something you don't want to have on your conscience if something bad happens.
Right.
A drug screening, an MVR, motor vehicle check. Make sure that you do a quick interview with them, just to make sure that they fit the culture of the company you're trying to create. Right. I would definitely put them through those rigors, and I would also have a written job description. That's something people don't really put into play a lot, but the Americans with Disabilities Act protects a lot of companies over 10 employees. You can't ask certain questions. Well, if you still have to make sure that the person has the cognitive abilities and the physical abilities to do the job. Right. So what I would do is I would have a specific job description for each phase of my operation. If you're a GHP technician, or if you're a termite technician, can you climb a ladder? Can you carry this 50-pound load? Can you crawl on your hands and knees for 30 feet? Can you tolerate attic heats of 140 degrees for up to an hour? Can you calculate square footage and linear footage? Can you calculate ounces per gallon? That kind of cognitive and physical abilities you need to completely identify to make sure that you're hiring the right guy. And if he's a little deficient in if he's got math deficiencies, maybe you can coach him up to show him how to read a label and calculate the proper applications. Right. To keep you out of trouble from FDACS and any other regulatory agency. So that's the key. Know who you're hiring. Hire good people. If you're selling something, make sure that you've got the right documentation to protect you. If you mentioned termite earlier, to branch into that new phase of operations. Certainly have an attorney look at what you're proposing. Make sure it comports with state law, because certain states have certain very specific requirements in their contracts. And Florida goes as far as to identify the font size in your contracts, and whether or not they are preventative or corrective. The termite species. Make sure you're addressing all those statutory and regulatory requirements.
Right.
And then also have something in there that is protects you, the disclaimers, that you're not going to be, it's not an open check, that if you're going to require, if you're going to offer wood replacement, that you've got disclaimers in there for uncorrected conducive conditions.
Right.
That you're identifying conducive conditions. You're identifying the termite species, that you give them a certain amount of time to correct those conducive conditions before you alter or change the terms of the contract. That you know that you identify old damage from new damage, so that if you've got termite damage without termites, that's old damage that was there before you did your treatment.
Right.
If you have termite damage with termites in it, that means your treatment wasn't quite as successful as it needed to be, and you may be liable for that termite damage.
Right.
But
right.
limit that liability for sure.
Yeah. What are we looking at as far as from the insurance aspect of what they need to look for?
Well, you want to make sure that you're dealing with an agent that knows what they're doing. The guy that's selling you your homeowner's policy, he may be a good friend, he may be a golfing buddy, a fishing buddy, a good fellow church member, but he may not know the specific coverages that your business needs. So I would probably go to one of the specialists in the industry for your commercial auto insurance. In terms of the coverages you need, if you have any employees, I would have workers' comp. Your first employee. The state law doesn't require it, but I would certainly protect my business and my employee by having workers' comp for the first person I hire.
Yeah, and I have this conversation with a lot of guys, and I said, listen, when I got my first employee, we got workman's comp, because in Florida in particular, unless I'm construction, I have an exemption up to, I think, 3 or 4 employees. Correct. However, that exemption doesn't relieve me of the liability. If he falls, I'm going to buy a hospital bill for him.
You bet. Even if he's hurt in an automobile accident, that's a workers' comp claim. That's not an auto accident. If he's your employee driving your vehicle, you can't claim that medical cost against your automobile insurance. That's a workers' comp cost, and your automobile carrier is going to deny that. Now they'll pay for the bodily injury of the person they hit if it's a multi-car accident, but your employee is covered by comp, period. So I would just make that investment. It's not terribly expensive. In Florida, the rates are set. So
we're like at 5% of payroll.
Exactly. And it doesn't matter what company you go to, the rates are all the same. They're so there's no competitive, you can't shop it necessarily, because all the rates are set by state law. Yeah. But to me, that is an absolute necessity to protect your company, because he could sue you, or you could be paying out of pocket medical expenses. Yeah. So I would definitely have comp for first employee.
Or he can go after the client if he falls on that client's property.
Yep, he could do that civilly and separately.
Yeah, and that's a nightmare for your company.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and that's not just in Florida. That's everywhere. If he's on a customer's property and the conditions are not well maintained and they present a hazard to that employee or anybody else stepping on that property, he has the right to sue them for damages, in addition to getting workers' comp. So you want to make sure that that's another thing about knowing your employee, knowing what kind of position they're in. Right. There are even, it's legally permissible to even do a financial background check if he's handling money, and most of our guys are handling money. Right. So you may even want to consider that as part of your criminal background check. Again, just know who you're hiring. Don't assume that they're a good guy because they say they are, or because your aunt knows somebody at church that knows somebody. That kind of thing.
We're doing that. We do a complete 50-state background check. Mm-hmm. We do a complete pedophile 50-state. We do state and federal. Mm-hmm. And then we do a complete county where they've lived in, where they note that they've lived in those counties. We also check each one of those counties. And that can take up to a week or two to get back. So you can't be in a rush to hire a guy, because these have taken as long as 2 weeks to get them back. And yeah, the whole thing where we're doing the employee assessment profiling, to see if they're a fit, plus the interview, plus a video interview. So yeah, it's difficult to hire. This is where most people I see are struggling. They say they can't find people, but then they got to go through this entire process where they feel makes it so much more difficult. But then they're open to all kinds of liabilities and problems that because they were in a rush.
And I've heard that it's hard to find good help. Well, I've heard that same argument for 29 years and 7 months. This has always been a difficult.
It's a different mindset when you're going in from solo operator to hiring. I'm working with guys who are running $2 million companies who don't have this process in place. They've just been hiring, off the cuff, and now they have the nightmares that I've been warning about. And I took a totally different approach. I took that path from the get-go, which has saved me. Believe me, it's still hard. You just gotta put as much money and effort into that marketing of getting that employee as you do to get your customer. And most people don't, and they don't want to put the investment in. That's the biggest challenge.
True. They don't want to take the time and plan out ahead to go through the process, but it's a small investment that will have huge returns because you don't want to put somebody in your customer's home that has a theft conviction or a violent, God forbid, a violent conviction. You don't want that on your conscience. You also want to make sure that you understand that the person you're hiring and know the coverage you're hiring, because in your general liability insurance, there could be a molestation exclusion. So if somebody is accused of attacking or molesting someone, that could be excluded from your general liability policy. Other companies don't have that exclusion. This is not a commercial, deal here, but make sure that you know your policies. Your agent can read your policies and explain the coverages you have, because you definitely want that coverage in your policy, just in case the worst happens. There's also another coverage you might want to look at called employment practices liability insurance. And that protects you from accusations of wrongful termination or discriminatory hiring or sexual harassment or creating a hostile work environment. That's another type. It's not terribly expensive, but it protects you as an employer from accusations against current or former employees, making those kind of employment-related accusations against you that are not covered by any other insurance. They're not covered by comp or general liability. So you may want to look at that coverage too if you're starting to gather employees. It will just protect you. We talked about comp. We talked about commercial auto. Well, let's talk about commercial auto for a second. Commercial auto is the most difficult and challenging thing that any operator faces. There is a looming crisis in commercial auto affordability and availability in this business. It's kind of reminiscent of what happened in the late 1980s with general liability insurance. When the whole Chlordane went off the market and we went to Duraspan, and that whole late 80s, there was a lot of litigation involved in the product deregistration in the United States. The same thing is starting to happen in commercial auto. We're seeing the markets harden, is kind of the terminology inside of insurance. The rates are going up. The coverages are going away. Competitors are dropping out of the market. You may have seen that. And that's driven by losses, because we have a problem with hiring younger people that are driving distracted. They're going fast. They're following too close. And they're having a lot of rear ends. We've got to create that culture in our businesses that says, no, we don't tolerate rear ends. Drive slower, drive with more distance between you. Don't drive distracted. Make sure the office doesn't call the technician en route. That's the worst thing that can happen. I rear-ended this lady because my boss called me and I have to answer the call.
Right.
That places the driver and the company in tremendous liability.
Yeah, we're in this mindset today that everybody wants an answer now, because we live in this instant communication society, and the patience just isn't there from a client that might text me. And he texts me and I'm driving or I'm doing something and I hear the phone ring or whatever. And then all of a sudden, 2 minutes later, it's like, hello, you haven't answered me. You don't have the time to eat lunch, or you don't have the time to think, because you have to get back to everybody now because everybody's expecting an instant answer.
And what I would ask you to do is, obviously you want to be safe. Number one priority is be safe for you and your employees and the driving public. I would put in a voicemail or a text response, automatic. Hey, I'm driving. I will return this text or I respond to the call as soon as I can pull over and it's safe to do so. If I got that text and I'm a customer, I would look at that and go, well, my company values safety more than they do answering my immediate call. So that's a pretty good company. I like that person. Hopefully that concern for safety will transcend and they'll go, if they're that concerned about safety while they're driving, certainly they'll be that concerned about safety when they're applying a product around my elderly parents and my children and my pets.
Right.
So that's the same kind of culture of safety you can create by just that simple use of technology, managing that technology. I would make sure that our offices, said, look, if that technician's en route, don't call them. Make sure that they're not in transit. The only way you know that is that if you have GPS or telematics installed in your service vehicles.
Right.
That technology is so cheap now. You don't have to get into a long contract.
Yeah.
You can spend $15 or $20 a month and get this.
Yeah, I think we're at $12.95 right now.
It's
on our vehicles. Yeah,
it's crazy not to have it. If you don't have GPS technology in your vehicles, you don't know where your vehicles are. You don't know how your drivers are driving. They could be speeding. They could be doing jackrabbit stops because they're looking at their phones. They could be driving this vehicle all over the weekends. They could be, they could be pulling boats, but they could be at the bars on the weekends. I'm not saying that you shouldn't trust your employees because you've done the proper vetting first. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
So I would
definitely. Yeah. I mean, when I get it, like, hey, you're taking those corners a little too hard. There's harsh cornering. There's harsh braking. What's going on? I mean, that I'm looking at making that part of their KPIs of performance reviews and stuff like that, because it is important that, hey, why are you going so fast?
Well, and it's an opportunity it's an opportunity for coaching. Like you just said, why are you going so fast? But it's also an opportunity to manage your business, because if the response is, why are you driving so fast? From the 15th to the 30th of the month, they say, look, my routes are so packed. Right. I feel pressure to get my production done so I can get paid and put bread on my table for my children.
And that's chronic in our industry.
Yes, it is. It is.
It's so chronic.
And it's a chance to rebalance the routes, maybe, or maybe look at scheduling options. The operating software we have right now, the artificial intelligence inside of it is so good that all we need to do is do the legwork with our customers, perhaps, and rebalance that so we can schedule more compact routes, less driving, more production per mile. Yeah,
that's what we're focused on right now is that route density, because we're a small company and we're spread out. And Miami-Dade, it's a big county. Sure. It's busy, it's traffic. So a 15-minute drive is 35, 40 minutes to go across. So as we're growing, we're recalibrating that constantly. So my guys are in more compact areas so that, and not, overpack them. So like I try to keep it at 8 hours a day. In the summer, man, at 104 degrees outside and with 100, I mean, they're toast. I mean, they're toast after 6 hours. They're done. So having that consciousness is vitally important for us. Let me ask you this, talking about is there such a thing as real? I want to send my guys. I was a professional driver because I used to drive 50,000 miles a year. But yeah, you're right. I got a 24-year-old who has very limited experience. He's very safe, driving. And I've got a 30-year-old with very limited experience also, believe it or not, driving. Sending them to some type of driver education training.
It does have value. It does have some value. Most of the trucks we're driving are not commercial rigs. I mean, most of our guys don't have CDLs. Unless you're doing fumigation, you don't have a CDL.
Right.
But reinforcing good habits is always a good thing. I'm 58 years old. I've been driving since I was, 15 years old. And just recently in my latest role, looking at automobile accidents and claims, it's really kind of driven this thing home for me. I know people that have had tragedies in their families, including mine, involving auto accidents. So that's a reinforcer as well. Having somebody tell you, hey, turn signals are a critical tool, slow down, thinking about the stopping distance and being able to look at landmarks for 3-second rules, all the stuff that you learned back when you were a teenager doing the driving test, I think could be reinforced and has some value. They're not going to teach people how to drive. It's just to reinforce good driving habits.
Right.
I don't change lanes. I don't make a turn without turning on my turn signal. It's like breathing. It's just something you do because I've done it so often that 30 days to reinforce a habit is possible. Is real. All you have to do is reinforce that habit, the behavior, and it becomes a habit. And good driving is nothing more than good habits.
Yeah, no, I thought about actually, because I've seen some of those, and I've actually thought of personally about taking them to see how they are, the defensive driving courses.
Sure.
Because here in Miami, everybody's an offensive driver. So we're just have to be on total. I told these guys, look up a quarter mile up ahead. If you know that you've got an exit, look up a quarter mile. If you see that guy, 5 cars starting to hit his brakes, you need to start planning on hitting yours because the guy behind him is going to hit the brake. And that's how we end up in a 5-car pileup because you're, one car per every 10 miles an hour. It's almost impossible in Miami. So there's so many things that I'm trying to coach them on when I'm driving with them. It's like, you've got a mile up ahead. You should already be in that lane. Why are you waiting till you get, they don't understand feet per second when they're traveling at 65, 80 miles an hour here. I mean, the traffic right now is flowing at 70 miles an hour easy in a 55. And they don't get that whole, hey, you're traveling at 105 feet per second. It's going to take you a second to respond. You've traveled 100 feet. You're already in that guy's rear mirror. By the time you're done, looking at some, trying to constantly educate them on this. And I think we need to make it part of a course because I'm putting together the academy. And I think that driver safety course for introduction to pest control, I think should be vitally important. And, that now that you brought that up. So what else are we looking at as far as what are the liabilities a lot of the pest control people are facing as far as in regular just pest control in the operation of pest control?
Sure. Let me approach this from the most frequent claims. How's that?
Okay.
I'll show you. I'll just give you the top 3 or 4 of each category of business. In workers' comp, the most frequent source of loss or source of injury I see are motor vehicle accidents. By far, it's 40% of all claims are motor vehicle accidents, followed by slip and falls. And that's just falling down on a level surface, just walking, stepping in a hole, stepping on uneven surfaces, and slipping on gravel, slipping on a slick street or mud. That's, believe it or not, we fall down a lot in this business.
Yeah.
The number 3 source of claims that I see, now these are just medical claims, not any lost time, so they're not severe claims, are dog bites. We get bit by a lot of dogs. You think the mailman gets bit by a dog a lot? Nah. No, we get bit by a dog. I see a dog bite claim every week or 2. So I see 50 to 75 a year.
Wow.
Yeah, dog bites. And most of them are minor. Have seen some where we've had to actually get rabies treatments, which are severe and painful. I've seen some infected dog bites. So, there's a whole dog avoidance protocol that I teach too. What to do just in case you're confronted with a vicious dog, how to avoid being confronted with a vicious dog. And all that does is take some planning. Having the officer, you call ahead to the homeowner and say, look, I'm going to be there in 11 minutes or 22 minutes or whatever your travel time is. Please secure the dog. And this because you've got it in the files.
Right.
They have a Roddy or a Dobie or whatever. This already. And just having them secure the dog. So those are the top 3. And then they're followed by ladder falls and things like that. Ladder falls are not terribly common, but they're severe because of gravity. When they happen, they're pretty severe, and they account for the number 2 source of lost time accidents. We do a lot of ladder climbing in our business, doing exclusion work for rodents and doing inspections, things along that line. So I would recommend a whole ladder training protocol as well. OSHA has really good material on ladder training, and they actually have an app that the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health has created. That's you can download it off the Google Play Store or the iTunes Store. That actually tells you the proper placement angle of a ladder. You open the app up, you put it against the railing of the ladder, and it tells you that exact 75-degree placement angle.
Oh, so it acts like a level so that your phone, you use it as a level. Got it.
Exactly. If there's the compass in your phone, which helps you, make find places, it's a directional tool in your phone, actually creates that proper 75-degree angle for that ladder placement. And just look up, if you go onto either one of those app platforms and just Google Google ladder app, and you'll see it. NIOSH will come up on it. So that's kind of the comp world. In automobiles, by far and away, the number one winner is rear end collisions.
Right.
That if we could, that's about 30%, 40% of all of my claims.
Right.
And I insure 9,000, 10,000 vehicles out there.
Wow.
So that's a substantial number.
So when we think of pest control and the liabilities, it has nothing to do with pesticides, really. I mean, a lot of it, very little. I mean, we're thinking, we're thinking we got all this liability for pesticides, but the reality is our conducive conditions of performing our business and being on the road and just being out in the element is more dangerous than the actual chemical. I mean, what percentage of chemical claim problems do we ever have?
Well, in terms of general liability claims, that's a good segue. In terms of general liability claims, the accusations of pesticide exposure are extremely rare. I mean, in the past 7 years, I've probably seen 4 or 5.
Wow. So
and I'm talking, and I insure 7,000 companies out there. I mean, I insure 35, 40% of the industry, and I don't see that many because they're just not out there. Now, I do see more frequently pet exposures, cats and especially dogs that will get into a rodent bait station or eat granules. So I would ask you, if you're doing rodent work and you're using rodenticides, make sure that it's in a properly secured bait box, and that bait box is away from where animals can get to it, because they're going to be curious, especially if there's an animal inside that bait box. That the dog is going to get in that bait box, and he may ingest some of that rodenticide. And if he's small enough, it could have a measurable effect on his health. So I would ask you to just double time sure that you're not putting any material out there where it could in any way get exposed to a non-target. The other claims in general liability that I see are garden variety termite damage claims, and a lot of that has a good deal to do with documentation and miscommunication.
All right, so let's get into that a little deeper, because I just got exposed to that. Okay. And I've always I used to be in contract negotiations. That was my official title, and some in the tune of like 13 million a year. And I got sued about once a month. So I understand what it's like to be deposed about once a month, which most people have never experienced that in their life. And when you got one of these claims, it was always taught to me by house counsel, you have to have the most paperwork, because he who has the most paperwork wins.
Yep. The biggest filed usually is the most defensible.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And that was it. So let's go into that. Let's dig into that a little bit deeper.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier that your contract should clearly state your responsibilities and your customer's responsibilities. You are responsible for new damage, which is damage with termites. You would define that term, new damage and old damage. But the customer is responsible for the upkeep of the property, to making sure that they don't create or prolong conducive conditions, right? Because it's very tough to beat termites when you've got moisture issues. Right. Termites are going to find the path in there, and your pesticide can only be in so many places. Right. So they may find that. But that also that kind of goes into documentation and communication. If you've got a conducive condition on this property and it's problematic and it's over years, what I would ask you to do is document that condition, communicate that condition, use photographs, use a renewal form for your termite, annual termite renewals for your subterranean termite treatments. Make sure that that renewal form gets to the hand of the customer. Email them with color pictures. The technology and the operating systems now are so easy to use. You take a picture on your phone, you upload it to the file, you email that renewal notice with the conducive conditions disclaimer on it to the customer. Okay. They can sign it electronically, and then you can have payment. And you can actually have a legal disclaimer in there that says, look, by signing this and remitting payment, you agree to that you know about these conditions, and you agree to repair them within the next 60 days, 90 days, or it will change the terms of the contract. You can go from wood repair to retreatment only, that kind of thing. But showing them pictures of the conducive condition is critical. Letting them know that they're there and that they have to repair them, or you cannot guarantee your work. You can't warranty the work for any kind of wood replacement is critical in this. And that picture, if you mentioned being deposed, that's about as pleasant as root canal. That's just not a fun thing to do, is it? You want to avoid that at all possible. And having the proper documentation and communicating that, showing the judge and the court that, hey, look, I gave them notice over 5 years. Here it is, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. How can I be responsible for something for their neglect, which is what your defense is going to be. They were a neglectful property. And I think I've seen that defense work. It's what we preach, what I preach in my role as a director of risk management is you lessen your risk. You're always going to have some risk, but you want to control the risk, mitigate the risk if at all possible. And that's how you do it, by just telling people what you're doing, what they're responsible for, what you're responsible for, and then showing them how they're falling down on their bargain, if they are.
Yeah, no, I just did an inspection this last week. A friend of mine actually figured out I was going to do termite, and he just had termites in his house, and the next door neighbor had termites. And so the guy came over to sell him. There is damage inside. He missed the damage inside the closet. That was obvious. Didn't even inspect. He was there 15 minutes. He just drew a diagram on the outside of the house, how many feet on the outside of the house, and no documentation at all. No, nothing noted of where the existing damage was. He totally missed the one behind the closet, which was behind the sink. And he only saw what was exposed with the lady, and that's it. But he just drew a diagram on the outside, how many feet, and the price. Nothing mentioned about all that existing damage in the contract. And next door neighbor, he had the shed, which was completely full of termites. Didn't even bother to document any of that. Just quoted the price on the contract.
Well, it sounds like he may have missed an opportunity too, because if it had an active infestation, he could have quoted a subterranean termite ground treatment and a subcontracted fumigation or referred fumigation.
Well, it did have one of them did have existing. The other one didn't. But he wrote it up exactly the same. No notes, no nothing. So your salespeople, in a rush to quote out quickly and not do any paperwork, then sell the job, and you're held holding it back because you as the owner don't know what's on that property. Only your inspector, which he says it on he says inspectors, I mean, you inspected and didn't catch any of this. And then exposed the company to the liability without the company knowing of what would happen.
One of the, and kind of a way of defending some of that is if you have a clause in your contract that says some additional treatments may be required in order to get control of an active infestation, which could add more, could exceed what was quoted here in this contract. So you do have some of that. If you need a fumigation, you could recommend a fumigation. Say if you've got extensive drywood colonies, or if you've got Formosan termites that are, have secondary reproductives.
They totally missed it because one of those properties had Formosan on the property. He just didn't see it because it was in a stump. And he only quoted the subterranean and totally missed the Formosan that was on the property.
Sounds like a missed opportunity all the way around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
that's
so
unfortunate.
basically they're waiting for me to get everything. They're not going to touch it. They're like, nah, we don't want to deal with it. It wasn't, he was there 15 minutes inspecting. I was there an hour and a half, inspecting that home top to
Wow.
bottom. Cause I'm just, I'm curious, George.
Sure.
Yeah, that's just how I'm wired. But yeah, so I'm looking at that. And when we're hiring people, and how much exposure and liability are your people exposing you by not having good training, not having good verification, not having a system where you can go back and verify what your people are doing
And
as a manager.
Yeah. And taking photographs. You can't manage what you can't measure.
Right.
And, and that's an old axiom of business. And, requiring people to take photographs, having a training protocol, ongoing education, of course, because you want this guy to recognize a Formosan sub, how to recognize Formosans from native subterraneans, of course.
Right.
That could be an additional sale. But having those additional training protocols of here's what you do. You take pictures of this, this, and this. You document the files so that when somebody else goes back on that property next year, if you do a treatment, let's say, and you're taking pictures of that conducive condition, that you go back year after year to show that the condition is improved, has been corrected, or is getting worse to protect your own company. So I would have that kind of training protocol. The technology, we talked about GPS earlier, the technology is getting so cheap and so good. I've got customers in the Northeast that he runs a seasonal mosquito business. All right. So he's shut down in the North, in New England, half the year. So he doesn't do any treatment. But his guys wear body cams, the GPS, they're GPS enabled. So he knows when his guys have done a circuit around the property. He can see their interactions. He can see their treatments. He can do quality control checks on it to show and use it for training purposes, or to verify and justify an invoice that was sent to a customer.
Yeah. Not to mention the liability issues we have with unhappy customers saying or making claims like, because even in inspections where you're trying to do your inspection, they don't want you to do the thorough inspection.
Exactly. It's like the video version of a written waiver. Don't drill this, Talavera tile over here. Well, ma'am, put this in writing. You said I can't drill your Talavera tile in that corner. I want to be waived of any responsibility for any damage that occurs undetected behind that tile.
Right.
That's the same thing.
Yeah.
Just the body cam itself, you can upload that to the cloud. You can review it. You can, you don't have to save everything because, the files would be too big.
Right.
But you can also use it to justify or to defend yourself. You mentioned that earlier. I had a claim where it was the claimant, the homeowner claimed that my guy hit the side of the car with a B&G, like swung it and accidentally, hit the car, and it was, $4,000. They wanted to repaint the car.
Right.
Well, if I would have had body cam video of that, I could have proven that no, my guy didn't hit your car. He walked on property, he did his job, he walked off without any damage occurring. That's just one of the things that in the next 5 or 6 years we're going to have access to. That'll be so cheap. It'll be just like the GPS. $20 a month. It's the cost of 2 number 5 meals at McDonald's, for crying out loud. I mean,
no, it's just ridiculously cheap. Let me ask you this: what about the liability on the customer saying, "Well, you're filming on my property," and how do you deal with that from a liability perspective?
Sure. Well, it depends on the state. That's highly variable by state. But in a lot of states, you can film and record if one of the parties knows that they're being filmed and recorded.
Got it.
So, I would check the liability of the state. Obviously, this podcast is going to go national. So I would check your liability in that state before I did that.
And international. So.
Yeah, exactly. Check that out. But I would definitely check the laws and as a courtesy to my customer. The owner of the company could just say, look, we're confirming the quality of work that we're doing for our technicians. Would you mind if? And they would say yes or no. And you can always disable the audio or disable the video according to their concerns.
Right. Yeah. Because because we do a lot of, high profile clients. I mean, we've got people who are admirals in the military. They don't even want their property disclosed. They take it completely offline, so it's not viewable. High security issues. I have a guys who used to do hostage negotiation for oil companies and things like that. And I would show up to his property. One day I showed up with my new van to do an inspection. I hadn't even put the decals on it. And imagine parking, tinted windows, white van parked in front of his house. The next thing I see is him tapping my window. And when he walks away, he's got his Glock back here.
Yeah, he's providing his own security.
Yeah, he was like, "Oh, it's you." I just, white van, tinted windows in front of my house. Not good. So those are the things that, that I experience. And I'm like, dang, are they going to want my guy walking around his house, where the address sometimes can show and the license plates are going to show. And, you're going to capture all this as you're walking around. Those are things that, we're trying to deal with, is how do we navigate that landscape? I know you got a couple minutes because you got to bail. You're already over. I know you had to go. Talk to me about your insurance business, your insurance company. What are you guys are doing?
Well, I mentioned our place in the market. We represent a single A-rated insurance carrier that's admitted in those states. So there is protection against insolvency. It's called the state collects the tax on those admitted companies. So again, in terms of shopping for insurance companies, I would definitely go with an A-rated carrier. AM Best is the national rating company that tells you about the health of a carrier. A-rated is the best. Admitted is better than non-admitted because, again, it pays into that security fund. Through that A-rated carrier, we write automobile, we write general liability, we write workers' comp, commercial property, commercial auto, the crime policy, which protects you against accusations that your employee stole something. So it's an intentional act that's not covered in other types of insurance, and employment practices liability. So that, again, we talked about that earlier. That's, accusations against sexual harassment.
Right.
We work through independent agents. So if you've got an agent out there that you deal with that either does other pest control business or maybe is a personal friend of yours that you'd like to represent you, have them contact us. We can get them up to speed on the coverages that pest control operators need, the coverages that we provide. And we can, maybe have a new relationship with that insurance agent, that a guy that may have their boat insurance and their homeowner's insurance with. So we're open to that as well. But I would definitely kind of orient myself toward a company an agent that knew the coverages in this business. The insurance business most people think of it as a necessary evil. It's something, right. It's a cost of business, but I'm telling you, when you need it, it matters. You need the claims people that know the coverages and the claims. You need the people that know how to keep you from getting into trouble, like the loss control that we do for our customers.
Right.
That's really important. Knowing the coverages, having the confidence that if you need something, you can pick up the phone, you can shoot an email out, and you got some help right there at the end of the line.
Right. Cool. And what's the name of because I know you've got a new name brand, or what's the name of the company?
Yeah, financial services, there's always change. We are branded as Xterminator Pro without the E. So it's XterminatorPro.com.
Got it.
And if you'll go there and look us up, you'll find me. You'll find Billy Kraft, the president of the division. Between the two of us, we've got about 50 years in pest control insurance in this space. So we know, if we don't know the answer, I got a short list of people that do.
Got it.
Pick up the phone and call.
Sweet deal. And what phone number could they call to get a hold of somebody to talk about their insurance? Or do you deal directly with the agents, or you deal with the public? I can deal with insurance with the pest control operators and their agents. They can call me directly on my office line at 407-241-3037. Excellent.
But from there we can send them and get them the help they need.
Awesome, man. I thank you so much. I know you got to go. You got a meeting in a couple minutes. Thank you for being here and for all your help. And hopefully we can do this again soon.
Absolutely, Frank. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and the invitation. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit of information with your listeners.
I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much. Have a great one.
My pleasure. You too, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.